Alright, so today we're looking at one of my personal favorite decks. It's actually Salamangreat. This was actually the first deck I started to play once I got back into Yu-Gi-Oh! In like early 2019. So I'm definitely a big fan of the deck. I think it's a really good control deck, but it kind of has like combo aspects to it, so I kind of like that balance. So let's get into the deck profile and we'll talk a little bit more about it. So the first card we're going to play is one copy of Salamangreat Gazelle. This is limited to one. Obviously, we would play more if we could, but it's a really good card. Anytime a Salamangreat is sent to your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand. So it's pretty much like an extender in that regard. But what's the craziest effect about it is that when it's summoned, so normal or special summoned, you can actually send any Salamangreat card from your deck to your grave. So this is a super graveyard reliant deck. It's like a trap based and like a graveyard reliant deck, right? So generally you're gonna be sending like trap cards to your grave. So something like Salamangreat Rage or Salamangreat Roar. But the benefit is that it's so flexible that you can actually send monsters, and that might come up if you're kind of low on resources. So the next card is Salamangreat Spinny. So this guy also has two effects. The first one is that you can pitch it from your hand and target a monster to make it gain 500 attack. That generally doesn't come up too much. It could. I think it would come up a lot more if that was a quick effect, but it's just a spell steal 1 effect. So the second effect is pretty nutty though. If this is in your graveyard, you can actually summon it back to your field just for free as long as you control a Salamangreat monster, and it will get banished after that. So this card used to be a lot better, and we used to play it at 3 when we had Mirage Dalio, because if you summoned it back from your graveyard and then overlaid it, say with like Gazelle to make a Mirage Dalio, which is a rank 3, it wouldn't actually get banished if you detached it from Mirage Dalio to activate the effect. So that made it a lot better, but I would say 2 is probably really good for the main reason of our next card is that we're playing 3 Foxy, and so people have different opinions on this. I think Foxy is a really good card just because of how like flexible it is, and you kind of have to build your deck around Foxy in my opinion. So if you play Foxy at like 3, even like 2, you probably want to play a lot of Salamangreat monsters, because basically it has a kind of a pot of duality effect. If you normal summon it, you can excavate the top 3 and add a Salamangreat card. So if you're not playing a lot of Salad cards, you're probably not going to be seeing a lot of cards off that effect. So there's kind of really no reason to play 3 if you're just playing like only 1 Spinny and like 1 Jack or something. So I would probably say that like if you're going for the heavier Salad build, play 3 of these. But the other, probably like the better effect is that if you get it to the graveyard, so there's a lot of ways to pitch cards out of your hand. It doesn't do it itself, but there's other cards that can do it, is that you can use its effect to, as long as there's a face-up spell and trap, actually pitch another Salad card, and then it'll special summon this guy, and then you can pop that face-up spell or trap. It's all in the same effect, so it's pretty good. It kind of dodges, so like say they have like Skill Drain or something and this is in the graveyard, you can just like pitch a Salad, like say like Gazelle or Spinny or something, and then it'll summon itself and then pop the Skill Drain, because this is an effect that it's like it's a graveyard effect that's resolving. So that's like super really good to get around a lot of like random floodgates like that. So I think it's pretty huge. So you pretty much want to be playing it. I would say at least at 2, but I think 3 is probably the correct number. So next we have some level 4s. So this is Jaguar. He is definitely important for the deck. He's kind of a graveyard extender. Once again, no surprise, I guess most Salad cards are graveyard extenders. So if you have a Salamangreat Link monster and its arrow is pointing anywhere on your field, you can actually summon this guy back from your graveyard by shuffling back 1 Salamangreat monster from your deck, from your graveyard into your deck. But what's really nice is that like it doesn't have to be something like Foxy or something like Spinny that you might want to use. It can actually be like a Sunlight Wolf or something like a Link monster that you want to recur later. So we'll talk about the gimmick of Salad, but basically they use a Link monster and their field spell allows them to basically re-link into that monster using just the same monster's material. So it's kind of like a one-for-one trade to have that monster gain some extra effects. But basically, instead of having that card just be sitting in your graveyard doing nothing, you can just recycle it and then use Jack. So we'll definitely get into some combos later on in the video. But next we'll have one Salamangreat Falco. This is the only common card in the deck, but it's too important not to play. It basically can save you late game. So there's a lot of crazy combos that if you have like Gazelle and Falco, you can kind of like go like almost like full combo just like with those two cards. So basically, whenever this is in your graveyard, you can return a Salamangreat monster from your field to your hand, and then summon this guy up from your graveyard. Or if it hits the graveyard, you could set a Salamangreat spell or trap from your graveyard to your field. So like really flexible in that way. It definitely has a lot of late game potential. So I guess you can call this guy the honorary salad card. It's Flame Bufferlo. So there's kind of a lot of debate on whether you should play Lady Debug or Flame Bufferlo. So I personally think Flame Bufferlo is too good not to play because I play a few more traps, and I think drawing into traps is a lot better than just potentially searching one card and then maybe getting it ashed, because what this card does is that if it leaves the field in any way, so technically it could go back to your hand, but most likely you're going to be linking it off for your link 1 of Banlist. But you can activate this effect and you discard any Cyberse monster, so it could be a copy of himself, so it's pretty flexible if you have 2, and you can draw 2 cards. So any card that says draw 2 I think is like should definitely be considered pretty highly. It is really cool because you can actually chain block this one with your Banlist, which we'll get to this one, but it lets you search your field spell. So if you chain block it, then basically they'll have to ash your field spell search over this, which just makes it really, really good. And also it doesn't even discard for cost. So if they do negate it with something like, I mean, you just won't discard. Sometimes you actually want that. Sometimes I think the discard is actually better. So I think it just depends on the situation, but I think it's really, really good. And so that's why I think you should be playing this if you're playing more Salamangreat cards, because obviously they're all Cybers. So you want to have a card to discard. So drawing this and only spells and traps that I guess that don't get you to a salad card is pretty bad. I guess you can't really do much, but that's why I think if you play a heavy spell and trap lineup, that's really good. So in terms of our hand traps, we'll play 3 Ash. I think this is like undoubtedly probably the best hand trap that like honestly probably that's ever been in the game, and I think that I just see no reason why you wouldn't want to play this. But like what makes it even more busted is that it's also a fire, and why that matters is that when you have your link 2 Sunlight Wolf, you can actually add back a fire monster from the graveyard. So if you need to pitch Ash for some reason, or if you already used Ash, you can actually just add it back to your hand. So it like in theory is just like infinitely recyclable. So it's actually just like the most insane card. So it was really cool because these cards came as like their first common reprint was in the Soul Burner structure deck. So it's if you can still find that, then it's a really good deal, because I'm pretty sure the commons for these go for like almost like $20. So it's just kind of insane. So we'll play 3 Ghost Spell. I think this is right now probably one of my favorite other hand traps besides Ash. I don't really think Valor or DD Crow are like that insane. I can see the argument for Skullmeister. I think after the new ban list, Draw and Lock isn't as good, but and also same with Imperm. I think they're not as good, but basically this card is like it's so flexible because it's like the opposite of Ash. So if you guys aren't as familiar with this one, it's if a card is being added from the graveyard to like your hand or your deck, or if it's being special from the graveyard, or if it's being banished from the graveyard, you can negate it. So it's kind of like the opposite of Ash in a way. So what's really good is that like if you're trying to go for like say you're trying to ash your opponent and they chain Called By, you can just chain this. I know like it's you're down 2 cards, but you know, if that ash was super important and they're going to use their 1 Called By on to try to push their effect through, then you can just stop that, which is kind of nutty. And I think it's probably like right now, just with all the graveyard effects, it's one of the second or third best hand traps probably in the game. And I think it's only going to get better as we get more hand traps. So we're going to play 1 copy of the Field Spell. The Field Spell isn't a good card to draw, but it's insane in that you do want it in your hand. And so basically you get it through using your Link 1 Balinks. So what this Field Spell lets you do is that if you have a Salamangreat Link monster, you can just basically re-link that monster using the first copy of the monster as the entire material. So it's really insane because that's basically how the deck functions. That's how a lot of the bonus effects from the Link monsters go off. That's how a lot of your traps are live. So it's really key. You don't want to play more because like you never want to draw it, like because you can search it so easily. There's literally no reason. It like honestly hurts to draw it. So I definitely would not want to play more. Like if it gets banished, like you can still play the game. It's not like you're gonna lose the game. It's just harder, and you have to be a lot more creative, and you have to hope that you have like if you have a lot of resources in the graveyard, you can still play the game because this just lets you relink for free. But if you're trying to go from a Link 2 into another Link 2, you could still use like 2 monsters to do that. Like it's not like you're just like completely out of the game at that point. So now this card is actually insane, and we definitely would play this at 3 if we could. It's a Salamangreat Circle, so it's basically just your Rhoda for the deck. It searches any Salamangreat monster. But it's really cool because it does have a second effect that if a Salamangreat has been relinked using itself as material, you can actually chain this and it'll protect it from all other monster effects for the rest of the turn. So it's like pretty important. A lot of cool interactions are like if you relink your Sunlight Wolf and then that might be like your 5th or 6th summon, and then you try to pass turn, they can try to Nibiru you because Nibiru pretty much hurts this deck like pretty bad, and you can just save your relink monster. So it's, you know, it definitely has a lot of uses, but I think like the fact that it's a quick play is really, really good because if you're able to use it, and then if you recycle it on the same turn, obviously it's only once per turn, you can't use it that turn, but you can set it, and then on your opponent's end phase, you can search just by flipping it, and then you can potentially recycle it on your turn again. So it's, if you're kind of like low on resources, or if you don't have access to your other traps, which are the cards you would be wanting to add back from your graveyard to your hand more often, then this card, you can just keep searching it, and like it's just like your opponent's gonna have a really hard time if they can't like stop you, because this deck, when it starts to snowball, it's just like you just have so many resources. You can pretty much like effectively use every resource you have in your hand and grave like every turn. So if they kind of like let you start to like snowball out of control, it's like just really hard. Like I mean, just like due to like sheer attrition, you're just going to probably win the game. So next we have 2 copies of Will the Salamangreat. So this is a pretty good card. It's basically an extender. So it's a monster reborn, but it's a monster reborn from your hand or your grave once per turn. So I think that's like really neat. I mean, that's continuous because if it wasn't, I think I'll play more. But the fact that it sticks around, you seem to play like 1 or 2. I think there's an argument to be said about 1, but I think 3 is like way too many. Like there's no reason why you would want to ever draw this card in multiples. So I think 3 is just like obviously way too many. But what's really neat is that you have a relinked Link monster. You can actually pop this card and then summon basically Soul Charge for whatever that Link rating is. So if you have a relinked Link 2, you can pop this card and Soul Charge from 2, and that's from the hand or the grave. So it's like kind of crazy what you can do with this card actually. So I think like for sure play it at 1, maybe play it at 2, just kind of depends on your build. So next we have the, again, like honorary salad cards, Cynet Mining. There's not like that many popular Cyberse archetypes, so I mean this card is like, you can play it in Marincess, but basically it's just search any level 4 lower cybers from your deck to your hand. But you actually have to send one card from your hand, so that works really well if you're trying to send cards that you want in the grave. So like a Spinny or something, you can just pitch that in the grave, and then Spinny just comes back, so it's just like free. So there's really nothing like there's almost no downsides for a lot of these. And then for example, it's really crazy that if you pitch a Spinny, let's say, and then you activate this card and search like Gazelle, since Spinny was sent to grave, you can immediately chain Gazelle for it to summon from your hand. So you just kind of have like this like crazy way of extending all your plays. So this card is like absolutely important. I think it would actually be potentially worse if it didn't discard. So that's kind of crazy. And then so we're obviously gonna play the one Call by the Grave. I think if this card was at 3, I just undoubtedly would play it at 3. There's no reason why you wouldn't want your plays to go through. So if you just need to negate something, you can just like if this gets ashed or something, you can just try to save it. But it is a pretty big downside. That like we do play a lot of hand traps in this deck, so if you negate something like an ash or potentially like a ghost spell or something, it won't be live for your turn. So you do have to keep that in mind. That's probably like the only downside, but I think the upsides like way outweigh that. So but since we can't play 3 Call by, we'll play 2 Triple Tactics. I think this card is actually insane. I actually think this card is like, for as hyped as it is, I think it's probably one of the most underrated cards right now. This is literally just a broken card. It literally says like if your opponent activates a monster effect during your main phase, you can just activate a one of 3 banned effects. So it's just like insane. So you can either Pot of Greed for draw 2, you can change apart for take control of monster until the end phase, or you can just confiscation and then just look at your opponent's hand and rip a card back into the deck. And honestly, this card like literally comes up like so much. So it's nutty because if you can still Call by and Triple Tactics, because Call by doesn't negate the activation, it just negates the effect, right? So as long as the a monster effect was activated, you can still Triple Tactics. So I mean, like just even drawing both of these, it's just like kind of insane. So but as for more draw power, I think Pot of Desires is again one of the best draw cards. Probably the best pot card. I just don't see why like not almost every deck is playing this. Like, so I understand that the Banish 10 is like kind of a steep cost, and if you're playing a deck that has a lot of 1-ofs, like I can understand that. But this deck is just like entirely like everything is like maxed pretty much. Like you're playing most cards at 3. You would play Gazelle at 3 if you could. So I think it's just like a free draw too. I mean, if we're being honest, most turns you can Flame Bufferlo to draw 2. You can search your field spell from Banlist, and you can Pot of Desires for 2. So I mean, like without even like having additional cards, you can probably draw 4 cards. Just off those 2, and then you can probably search once off of like Gazelle, and then once off of Banlist to the field spell. So I mean, it's like actually insane how many cards you can add to your hand. So the number of resources you can gain on your first turn is just like astronomical. So I think this is like the most important card. The only thing that like you have to do is just play this card last. Like, so you just want to make sure that you search your Banlist first and get your Salamangreat Sanctuary, the field spell, and then just banish 10, draw 2, just like for literally no reason. It's just like a 2 free cards. So it's just like it's crazy. As for the traps, we're going to be playing 2 Salamangreat Rage. So there's 2 Salamangreat traps, and I think this is I would say the better one. This one basically lets you do a 1-for-1 trade. You can send a salad from your hand or field to target and pop a card. So like that's like pretty good. But the crazy part is that if you have a relink salad link monster, you can target that link monster, and then when it resolves, you can choose up to 2 cards to destroy that your opponent controls. So it's crazy because it doesn't even target your opponent's monsters. It does target your link monster, but that's generally not an effect. That's matters unless you're you have a token and you're playing against Dino and you can't target anything. But like pretty much that's just like crazy. So it's like you can like pop cards that are like untargetable. Obviously like Dragoon still can't be destroyed, but like there's a lot of cards that are untargetable but still can be destroyed. So that's like, it's really huge. And then basically the other effect also comes into play if you're low on resources and you just need to like do a 1-for-1 trade just to pop something that's like problematic. So the other card is Salamangreat Roar, and this is the counter trap. And so this is basically just, it just negates any spell, trap card, or monster effect. It negates the activation obviously, and just destroys it. So you have to have a link monster, a Salamangreat link monster, to actually resolve this effect. But overall, it's like definitely like really good to play as a one of. Pretty much how it always goes is that if you don't have any trap, you're gonna send Rage to the grave and get that back with Sunlight Wolf. And then if you do draw Rage, you can actually send Roar to the grave and then get that one and then have both. So I think this ratio has like always been really good for me. I've seen people be playing like 2 Roar or something, and it's not that it's not good, but like basically if you only have like 1 reincarnated link monster and if you only have 1 link monster and they get rid of it, this trap is like completely dead, right? So if this is still live, as long as you have like say like a Spinny just in defense mode, or if you have a card in your hand, at least you can do that 1-for-1 trade and just pop a card. So if they like kaiju, like your reincarnated Sunlight Wolf or something like that, it's like, sure, you don't get as much advantage here, but you still have a pop. So I think like that's kind of why this card's just generally better. But again, this card's really good if they like Harpy's Feather Duster, like you definitely want that card. 3 Imperm. So I think this card is probably like, these are like probably the last 3 cards in the deck currently. I think in terms of like priority, I think these are probably the ones I would trade for potentially something like Skullmeister or maybe Nibiru, just depending on the format. So if you're going to like locals or something, obviously like these are really like, pretty expensive. So I mean, you can trade these out for like a lot of other cards. These are definitely not necessary. I don't know, like I don't know if Effect Failure is still good. So like Drinking Wall Calamities obviously is banned. Zexful's banned. So those were the cards that like basically like Imperm kind of didn't really do much because of the shenanigans with Virtual World. But now I think you can like if you have Effect Failure, you can just play that. But I just think Imperm is like so good because of its effect that if it's set in a column, you can actually flip it, and then it will not only be able to target and negate a monster effect, but you can actually negate all the other spells and traps in that column. So if you have like a Floodgate, you basically just set it in that same column, and then you just flip it and kind of get a 2-for-1 off Imperm. But what makes it probably the most busted is that you can just activate it from hand, as long as you control no cards. So it's like, it kind of plays both roles of like being like a Veiler, but just a better Veiler, because it actually can be activated on your turn if you're going first and it's the first card you play. Like you can just activate it from hand. So it's like super important, I think, for against a lot of decks. Probably a lot of like more rogue decks are going to be like pretty effective by it. But yeah, I think you can probably cut it for something else, depending on like the meta game that you're playing up against. And then I think this card is like for sure like one of probably like the best cards in the deck actually. So I think what's crazy is that like Solemn Strike, I mean, it's such a low cost of only 1,500 life points, and you can negate a special summon or a monster effect and destroy it. So like honestly, your opponent just like probably never sees this coming, because when you're playing up against Salad, they're pretty much expecting you to have like Roar, to have Rage, and so they're kind of playing around that, right? So like they know that like you can potentially destroy something, right? So it's like they will feel like pretty good if they bring out like a monster that can't be destroyed by card effects, right? They'll think like, oh man, like we're like, if this is like this, like a link monster, and it's like, okay, yeah, like this is totally good, right? But you can just like negate the summon of it, and then there you go. It's just like, it's just gone, and they just won't be planning on that. So like it's really good for like just a lot of reasons. I mean, obviously, monster effects, it's not just on the field, right? So it's like if they have a graveyard effect or something, you can just negate that. So it's like super versatile, and so if they do have like Lightning Storm or Harpy's Feather Duster, like you really do want this Roar because pretty much you don't have any other way of protecting your back row. So you definitely want to be able to have that. So I can definitely see the argument for playing that, but I'm not sure if Judgment is the answer. I have a few side deck techs that we'll get to that I think kind of play a better role than Judgment. So yeah, so now let's like go on to the extra deck. So the first card in our extra deck is going to be 3 copies of Salamangreat Phalanx. This is straight out of the Soulburner structure deck, and is still probably one of the best link ones in the game. So it takes 1 level low, 4 lower cybers, and when it's link summoned, you can search the field spell from deck to hand. So obviously that's like huge. That's why you never want to play more field spells. You can just always search it. Getting to a link 1 is pretty easy. You can even use like Flame Bufferlo. It doesn't actually have to be a Salamangreat monster. So that's pretty huge. But it's arguably almost better effect is that if it's in your graveyard, you can actually banish it to protect the destruction of any Salamangreat cards that will be destroyed at the same time. So it's a non-activating effect, so it definitely gets around things like Abyss Crawler, right? That like prevent you from activating graveyard effects, and it just substitutes. So what's really huge is that like it's not just a 1-for-1. So if you have like 3 Salamangreat monsters or something, and they activate like let's say like Dark Hole or Lightning Storm or something, you can actually save all of them if they're going to be destroyed at the same time with just this 1 card. And what's like even better is that you can actually save spells and traps. So like you can save your field spell if that's gonna be face up. You can save like your Will of Salamangreat. So pretty much all of that is like just insane. So there's really no reason why you wouldn't want to play 3, because you kind of always want to have one in the graveyard, because you'll be banishing them like probably like once a turn maybe to protect your best guy. So you're just gonna want to be linking back into a link 1 before you climb up. And so what you'll be climbing up into will be Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf. This is like, aside from Gazelle, this is probably like the best card in the deck. It's like the card that's you're always going to end on. There's like pretty much no reason not to. So he has like 2 just really insane effects. So if he's link summoned using himself as material, you can once per turn add back a Salamangreat spell or trap from your graveyard to your hand. So it's just like kind of insane, because you can just keep getting like infinite resources. So if you have just a few more resources than your opponent, you will just like blow them out of the water in terms of attrition. Because if you have like a set Rage and then they summon like, let's say like 2 monsters, and you just like Rage, target Wolf, pop those 2, they pass turn, goes back to your turn, you draw, you get to get Rage back to your hand, and then you can just set it back to your field. And it's just like kind of just going to be a pretty much a slow death for your opponent. There's little they can do to really come back when you have like that much like recyclability, because like not only are you drawing a card, but you're just getting that back every turn. So it's just kind of insane. And then whenever a monster is summoned to one of its link arrows, so this could also include this one. So if your opponent does it, you can add back a fire monster. So basically the Salamangreat, the gist of the deck is that like they keep summoning monsters from the graveyard. So once you link into this guy, if you summon back like a Spinny or like a Jaguar to its arrow, you can just add back a fire monster. So that could be Ash, that could be Gazelle, that could be Flame Bufferlo. So there's like a lot of crazy good targets for that card. So this card's like just definitely a 3 of. You definitely want to be playing this card. Now here's like more of an optional card. So Heatleo. So the reason you play it at 2 is because it does have a good effect when it's relinked into itself. Is that you can actually target a monster in your graveyard, and you can make a monster on the field that equal to that attack. So for example, if you have like an Ash Blossom in your graveyard, you can target a monster on the field and then make it 0 attack to match Ash. So like that definitely comes up, but like what's crazier is that it has an effect that if it's link summoned, you can shuffle, you can target and shuffle a card in your opponent's spell and trap zone back into the deck. So it can be face up, face down. It just can't be the field zone. It has to be specifically spell and trap zone, but it's not once per turn. So if you link into Heatleo and then you use the field spell effect to relink into Heatleo, you can actually shuffle back 2 cards. So like if you're climbing up, you know, into like some sort of like link 3 like this, like you can shuffle back both pendulum scales or something. Like if your opponent's playing pendulums, I don't know who's really playing pendulums in 2021, but you know, it's a pretty good card, but I think it can definitely be cut for other things. So it's kind of up to you. But currently, I think it's like still really good. So but never want to play 3. So 2 is really good. So 1 Linkuriboh, Linguriboh, not Linkuriboh. It's distinctly different. So what's nice that you don't need a level 1. You actually need a level 4 lower Cyberse. So again, that's just like Banlist. That's pretty much any card in your deck. So I would definitely say this is really nutty because you can just negate any trap card. So obviously it won't work against a counter trap, but if you have this on your field, you can just tribute itself to negate and banish a trap card that's activated. So honestly, that's like kind of insane because like this is like really good protection against like evenly matched, or like let's say imperm. I guess no one's probably going to be imperming. Once you get to this guy, once you have him out, no one's probably gonna be imperming. They probably would have impermed like a Gazelle, well before you summon this. But it's really good protection against cards like evenly matched, unless you set up kind of a floodgate monster, which we'll get to. We have a couple options there, and then our other Link 2 Cyberse kind of generic monster is gonna be a Splash Mage. So this guy's kind of insane. So it just takes 2 Cyberse monsters, and you can just basically target a Cyberse in your graveyard and special summon it for free. In defense, you negate its effects, but it just like lets you link climb for just like absolutely free. You can only summon Cyberse for the rest of the turn, but like that's like not a big deal because as you'll see, we'll be playing the update chamber, transcode, and then access code package. So this is like undoubtedly, like if you want to play Salad like at a real competitive level, like you just undoubtedly have to play these 3 cards. There's like no way that you just can't, because this is basically how you just OTK extremely consistently. If you just are able to, you don't actually have to use transcode all the time. So if you have 3 resources, like 3 monsters, and as long as 2 of them are level 4 or lower, so you can make update jammer, you have like full combo to full OTK potential, because you can just relink, or you can link update jammer with your like a link 1 like a Banlist into transcode, and then you get back update jammer, and then you link transcode and update into access code. So access code gains 3,000 because it's a link 3, so he'll be at 53, and then he can attack twice because of update jammer. And not only that, is that update or access code can actually pop, non-targeting pop to potentially 3, maybe even 4 actually, depending on if you have a Linkuriboh in the graveyard. But because it's not once per turn, you can just banish a link monster, and as long as you're different attributes, you can keep doing that as many times as you want per turn. So if your opponent has like 2 or 3 monsters, you can just get access code out, banish, and just swing twice for 53 each time, so like over 10,000. So it's just like, it's kind of insane. Like you just have to do it. It just ends games like so quickly, because if your opponent just doesn't have a lot of resources and you have like pretty much like 3 bodies. I mean, honestly, you could depending on how much life points your opponent has, you can get there with 2 if you use Splash Mage, but you might not be able to do like 10,000, but you can definitely do quite a bit of damage. So, and then as for any Xyz monsters, currently I'm just playing Baguska and Abyss Dweller. So I think these cards get a lot better if you're playing the Parallel Xyz card. I just don't think it's as consistent, because I think I would rather see Salad cards, like I said, for combos with Flame Bufferlo and for combos with Spinny, with combos with Foxy. And I kind of feel like I kind of brick on Parallel Xyz. I know it sounds like counterintuitive, but it's just like I've just never had good testing experience with it. I can keep trying it out and see if it gets better, but pretty much you can still make these with Jaguar and Falco, just maybe a little less consistently, but when they do come out, they're just insane. So basically, if you summon Baguska in defense mode, it just turns all monsters to defense mode and negates their effects. So it doesn't obviously work on link monsters, so that's like, it's not as insane as it potentially could be, but pretty much like if you just have this guy in defense mode, your opponent just like can't really play like realistically, because like you almost in every deck you're going to need monster effects on field. So if they just can't do that, then they just can't really play. And then by the same token is that if they can't go into any sort of link monster, then they can't really attack this guy because all the monsters are in defense, and he has like 2000 defense. So I mean, he's, you know, pretty beefy. Fist Roller is like obviously like a staple. If you just two level 4s, once per turn, you can just quick effect and negate, or actually not negate all graveyard effects, but prevent any graveyard effects from happening, from activating. So I think it's like definitely really important to play, especially in like this like graveyard centric format. So these are probably like the 2 best Xyz you could play. But like I said, if you play parallel Xyz, the main deck monster, I think you'll be making these guys more consistently. But for me, they work fine as like just kind of like a one-off if I happen to draw like the cards. So yeah, that's it for the extra deck, and then we can talk about a few side deck techs now. So obviously, the side deck is going to change depending on like what your given like format is. I think I did try to tailor it to the newest Banlist that's out. But if you're playing like this at like a locals, obviously you probably want to, you know, kind of gauge if people are playing more rogue or if they're playing really heavy meta. But this is kind of the balance that I found that I think is like a pretty good starting point. So I think 2 Artifact Lancia. This card is just it's a hand trap that lets you stop all vanishing effects for the rest of the turn. So it hits a lot of decks. Pretty much like you know, it's kind of a blowout against like Dinos and a lot of other maybe even like Dragon Link and things like that. So I think it's like really good just to play at 2. You don't really want to see 2 copies of it. It kind of like does nothing at 2. So I probably wouldn't play 3. I don't think there's a big need to, because if we play other cards like Nibiru, I think again, like you don't want to see 2. So I think just playing 2 and hopefully destroying 1 is probably your best bet there. Just kind of a good board wipe if your opponent gets a little too greedy. We're playing 2 Lightning Storm here. I think this is probably the right number. We're playing 1 Feather Duster, so I don't think there's a reason. Again, it's once per turn, so why would you want to see 2? It's pretty much, I think it's pretty much like going to be a staple at 2, especially going to this newest format where like we don't have True King, we don't have like Zexal and things like that. So now this card I think is like, again, like super underrated. I think this is probably one of like the best trap cards. I don't know why like every control deck is not siding these, because like pretty much like if you go first, you just have to pay 2,000 points and reveal your hand, which honestly is, the life points are like minimal, and your hand is probably going to have like a card that you added back. Like you might have a Gazelle that you added from grave, and like that's it. So your opponent already knows your hand, so that's not even a true cost. But basically you just get to look at your opponent's hand and banish a card until the end of the turn. So if they have 1 out, right? If they have a Harpy's Feather Duster, if they have a Lightning Storm, you just rip that card, and then not only is your back row not going to get blown out now, but now your Rage and your Roar that you have set, for example, you know exactly what to hit. You know that like if I just Roar the first effect, they don't have any extenders, or if you can see that maybe I should just wait for them to like link 2 and then just Rage the link 2 and then it's gone and that's it, and they just can't play, and like things like that. So it like, and then again, you just like, if they just don't have a way to like continue and push through, you just OTK them on the next turn. Like it's like that easy. So I just don't see why people just aren't playing this, because you side this in going first and it's just like literally insane. That's probably the only card I would side in going first. Maybe Lancia, depending on the matchup. Like if it really hurts them, you can probably side that out, but or side that in, but it just depends. And then so another blowout card is evenly matched. So I think, you know, this card has like always been good, pretty much, and I think people just don't really play it. So you do lose your battle phase, but like at the end of the day, like to have an effect that just banishes every card but 1, that's like literally insane. So I mean, I just don't know why people aren't playing it. It's not even once per turn, so like if you have 2, you can just activate the second one, and it's when you're still in the end of battle phase, right? So yeah, it's kind of insane. So I think it's just like a crazy 3 of. And then for our power 1-ofs, we have Pankratops, Featherduster, and Red Reboot. So pretty much Pankratops, just, you know, kind of free value if you're going second. You just drop it and then you just like pop whatever you want. Or you just run over something, right? I mean, like if there's like a monster that has like 2500 or less attack or something, you can just run it over instead of dealing with its negate, for example. Harpy's Featherduster, I mean, I don't think we need to really say much. I think this card is like actually insane. I mean, I just don't know if people like realize like how insane this card is. I mean, it's like just way better than Lightning Storm. Like you can have as many cards on the field as you want. You can top deck this, you know, mid game and just like play it. So that's why the Lightning Storm isn't as good as something like this. So I mean, if this was at 3, obviously I just wouldn't be playing Lightning Storms. I would just obviously be playing 3 of these. And Red Reboot, I think it's really good. I think honestly, like depending on the build you're playing, you can probably say play Imperial Order instead of this. I think it just depends. So this card's really good for just being able to kind of handle control decks. So if they only have like one Solemn Judgment or something, right? And like for some reason they spend it on like your Featherduster, right? Because like obviously they would just lose everything if they didn't. You just Red Reboot and then just like turn off their turn, and then it's just like that's it. Like just blows them out. It's like, what do they do? You know, like so it's just like it's kind of crazy. So you'd have to pay half your life points if you want to activate from your hand, but it's just like so worth it because you could just pretty much win. Yeah, so that's pretty much the deck. If you guys have any comments or suggestions, just let me know. Let me know down in the comments. But I'm gonna be trying to put out more deck profiles. I'm thinking like maybe next we'll look at like dinos, and then I'm also trying to put together a Blue Eyes deck. So if there's anything you guys want to see, just let me know. And then yeah, if you haven't subscribed yet, definitely subscribe. I think I'm gonna try to start putting out videos on like a regular basis. And yeah, if you guys like the video, please smash the like button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.